We now return to the heart of the forest. The peace talks. When the talks started, we weren't alone. A sudden storm that evening made us all huddle in makeshift tents, and the forest closeness helped to break the ice. Many old rotten trees were toppled by the wind, and we used the occasion to move the discussion from trees being cut down to whether fallen trees should be removed. So we started talking, and it became big. Christ. I don't know what tipped the scales in the end. The press, the international attention, the local interests coming together, our passion. The talks weren't easy. Finally, an agreement was reached. Fuck me. Finally, an agreement was within our reach, but the talks weren't easy. The state forests, the woodworkers, the local population, ecologists, scientists, activists, everyone wanted something. I was by no means an expert, but I wanted to play my part in the proceedings. Okay, make sure the talks are fair? Why not? We're not very cunning. Let's just do this. Boosting our honor. So I decided to observe the talks and make sure everything was okay. The spiritual side of the situation interested me, and I wanted to make sure that both sides had good intentions. The talks went on and on. Of course, I had my opinions. Everyone at the scene had their own opinion and their own point of view, and I had mine. Let's talk the bark beetle. In the middle of it all was, of course, the spruce bark beetle, a dangerous infestation and a convenient excuse for the logging. The beetle has always been part of the forest ecosystem, pointed out one of the ecologists, but the recent droughts made the spruce more susceptible than ever, the foresters countered. We have to cut down the trees to stop a total disaster. I saw one problem with this approach. They're cutting the wrong trees? There's more at stake? They're just gonna poo-poo me if I go this way. I guess there's more at stake than just cutting down some trees and stopping the spread. Because realistically speaking, the forest would be fine. It would recover. Beetles do not cause desertification. They are cutting the wrong trees, but this is just going to go with, oh, well, we'll just cut the right trees then. Let's... Sure. There's more at stake here, I guess. The trees they cut down would end up as fuel, really... Oh, okay, well, this is not really the way we were going, but... The trees they cut down would end up as fuel, releasing more CO2 to the atmosphere. By focusing on one smaller problem, they were slowly killing us all. Yeah. You fetishize the forest, scoffed one of the officials. People cultivated it for hundreds of years, and it cannot survive without our help. He's right. You want to take our forest from us? Or, that's not a question? A group of locals attacked the activists. You're not from here, and you tell us how to live our lives. It's not just a forest. Well, we're not going to get anywhere with this. Probably should have just picked the middle ground. Yet they unbalance an ecosystem. They're not going to go for the spiritual mumbo-jumbo, but this would be in more with my character. Fuck, I don't know. Trying to tell them about the spirituality that's just going to go nowhere for me, so... The problem was that human intervention unbalanced the ecosystem, and if they pushed it any further, they'd lose all that made the Pushcha unique. Opinions clashed, tempers flared, but eventually new, constructive ideas started to emerge. At least one of them caught my attention. The whole area should be a national park. Was it not? I thought that was established at the very beginning. International observers could help. Okay, well, these bumpkins already are pissed off that some foreign activists are coming over here. They're definitely not going to want that. Winning the local populace was essential. Well, yeah, since these two have already struck out ideas, let's go with trying to win over the locals. It struck us that if we won the local populace to the cause, everything would be easier. If people saw the forest, not the wood, as their local treasure, preventing the loggers from breaking the law would be much easier. It was a long and hot day. I rubbed my eyes. I was so tired I could barely keep them open. My head was spinning. I don't know, determination and perseverance, but am I actually helping here? And the more tired I get, am I going to make worse decisions? Would it be better for me not to join this? I feel like this is a cop-out. You know, this is the player saying, I don't want to do this anymore, and then something is going to happen in the background, which, you know, fair enough. I don't actually belong here. I am a tourist. I've given my say and my help. I've killed a few guys. I've done my part. But I'm also a Turge. I now have obligations with a capital O. I feel like I'm going to regret this, but let's keep going. What was a little heat stroke when so much was at stake? The talks continued. Of course, they had to make it dramatic. There were cameras, there were lights, the negotiations lasted all day long. We reached the first draft of an agreement literally at sunset. I had no doubts. They'd only decided to stop the logging because they realized there was something in it for them. I felt relief. But at the moment, I just looked at the sky and laughed. I felt overwhelming relief. And then my exhaustion caught up with me. I found a quiet spot, sank to the ground, and fell asleep. The epilogue. Quiet before the storm. So the storm is still coming. The next morning, cheering of the crowd woke me up. It was a victory, after all. Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it's on fire. Hint, the logging stopped. What the hell? Okay, that's done. My goal of finding my identity... Am I supposed to max it out to make that work, or what? And then we still have to do this. Maybe that comes at the end, I don't know. We'd won. The Pushtja was safe, at least for the time being. People were excited, antsy, full of emotions. If the loggers hadn't left, they'd probably have charged at them. There's no one to fight. Not anymore, I guess. I guess I can be glad we avoided open conflict. But, again, I feel like we're about to butt heads with Olga, and I'd like to keep the rage up. I do not know if that has any impact whatsoever upon a fight. Many obstacles, but also makes aggressive. Okay. So maybe it's best if we stay in neutral rage at all times. But now there was no one to fight, so we partied instead. Soon we were all dancing, talking, singing, and in some cases making out in the shadows. I had to stop someone from making a fire. I mean, for fuck's sake, we were in the middle of the forest during a drought. Now they spell it. But my friends didn't join in the festivities. They just sat on the logs looking at the humans with weary eyes. I joined them. I found my pack. We sat in the shadows far from the humans. Look at them, murmured Olga. Loud, messy, stupid. Tomorrow this place will look worse than if we'd let them do the logging. But will they... I mean, you can clean up a mess. I don't know that we want to agree. I mean, that might neutralize things with her. She is, after all, the pack leader now. Alright. We'll go with the flow. It's depressing, I sighed. Olga looked at them for some time, her eyes darkening with anger. We need to watch them, and when they try to do something stupid, we can't hesitate to put them in line. Oh boy. She was right. I was afraid she was right. Time would tell who was right. Under the trees. We gathered in the clearing in which I'd first woken up as a girl. Lisa stood in the middle of the clearing, the wolf and weasel circling her and each other cautiously. Olga, honey, she said, looking at the Black Fury. It is time to decide the Sept's fate. Olga nodded. There was madness in her eyes, her pupils dilated, madness and bloodlust as she bared her teeth. It won't last. The peace won't last, she said, clenching her fists. I killed that moron, Cornell, to prevent this, but here we fucking are. That night, we fought. I knew it. This makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. The rifts that divided our sept proved inconsolable. Kim and Pat left. That night we fought. Olga had decided it was the only way to solve things. No one died, no one won. Later, Kim and Pat decided to return to Germany. I wasn't the only one who saw Olga's encroaching madness. I guess the patron of the wolf letting them go? I could go with them, abandoning this. We're not on friendly terms. I mean, we're gonna come to a fight. She killed Cornell. Like, she doesn't like me, and without a supporter, i.e. Pat, I think it's in our best interest. Like, if it were me, I would just go too. Like, first of all, this isn't my home, even though my family's still here. But that's the other thing. We are connected to this forest through family blood ties. The Wolf Mother is my connection to this forest. My family is a part of this. Alright, stick around. I watched them go. Olga approved of my decision. Lisa and our patrons made sure that we did right by Garou law and the Sept matters were resolved. But more happened that summer. Oh boy. It didn't cover everything that had happened that summer, though, so some consequences would have to unravel this with time. Daniel introduced me to the wolves. Later, Daniel introduced me to the wild wolf packs living in the forest. We would spend a lot of time with them searching for the lost Garou cubs we hoped were out there. Anya and Bartek were still alive. Okay. I would assume she would go home by now. Despite everything that had happened, Anya and Bartek were still alive. I counted that as a small victory. We would disappear from each other's lives slowly, our paths too different to keep up with each other. But it was all still ahead of me for now. The first chapter of my new life was coming to an end. I'd come there to meet the forest. And we at least got that. We achieved that. I breathed in the smells of the forest. I sat under the oak tree with my back against its trunk. I saw a squirrel running away with an acorn. The forest didn't care, I thought. Not really. It just did what it did best. Grow. That was what the forest really cared about. Quiet before the storm. Your story is almost over. This might be a good time to take the last look at your character sheet. Are you not going to let me have it? Alright. So we need to see, that's the other thing though. We picked the tribe of the Glasswalkers and then we decided to stay in the forest in rural Poland. So, our mystery, me in the forest. People were scared of whatever, blah 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 blah. Okay, so... The clearing was empty and full of sunlight. The harvesters were gone, leaving the scars of their tracks behind. People were cleaning up the campsite, making plans to turn the temporary protest site into a permanent tent town. I took a deep breath. The air was sweet and smelled of coming rain. The upturned soil smelled of turf and the sweet aroma of decay. There would be a storm later that day, I could feel it. A faint, sharp layer of electricity surrounded the wetness. I smiled. I liked my new sense of smell. This is not the end, said the ash-gray wolf. I assume you know that. I sighed. Of course I knew. It was just a momentary break, a truce that both sides needed to regroup and reinforce. Yeah, I know, I sighed, looking around. I had something else on my mind. There was a squirrel somewhere. I could smell it. I wanted to chase it, to run, to feel the thrill of adrenaline rushing through my veins, but I couldn't spot it. It mocked me from the branches above, squeaking curses in its squirrel tongue. I couldn't see it, but I ran anyway. So I just ran for the thrill of it. Cubs gather around the fire and listen to the story of Maia Borodish, known among the Garou as Cassandra of the Glasswalkers, thirds of the Morning Wolf Mother pack. She always honored her packs with spirits. Maia managed to negotiate a fragile peace and stop the harvesters, but would it hold? The first protests against the logging of the Białowieża Forest took place in 2016. The game was loosely inspired by those events. All characters and events depicted in this game are entirely fictitious. Thanks for Turn that up. Oh, Jesus. Does this not mute? What the shit? Okay, well, jeez. I wasn't going to give this game 5 stars to begin with, but it loses 1 star just for that bullshit at the end. Can't turn off the ending music? I mean, come on. And the fact that it's not even tied to the music options to begin with, like, the fuck? Why would you do that? Why would you make a separate song? Whatever. Anyway, the game, uh, I mean, okay, so first of all, this is not the same company that did the vampire games that I've played. So you can't really make a comparison on that regard. But to compare the difference between the text-based visual novel of the vampire games to um, this one felt emptier, I want to say. There's some interesting mechanics in there with the choices feeling a lot more visceral, I guess, than in the vampire games, especially the second one that I played, Shadows of New York. That one was very on rails. It felt like my decisions did not make much impact at all. And in fact, I looked it up, and there were only 5 choices in the entire game that actually did have an impact on the ending. This game feels like there is a chance for a lot more. Like you can make decisions that are actually going to impact the story. So I wouldn't say that this story was on rails. It was just very rushed. I mean, for crying out loud, we didn't have the ability to turn into a werewolf, hence I mean, the whole titular character of this until well past halfway through the game. And that's unfortunate because the whole changing into werewolf form of one of the 5 forms, being able to affect the story, that could have had even more impact. That could have been much more impactful and would have been very interesting. So, I mean, the pacing of the game where you're a newbie who's coming to learn about your past and you find out, oh my God, I'm a werewolf. Yeah, I get that. You need to set that up. But that just means that your game needed to be longer. And if they did, in fact, just base the idea around real world situations, I guess I kind of understand that. But I don't know. The pacing just bothered me a lot. It started out all right because there was just that mystery of like, oh, we got a lot to learn, and then the mid game was basically just like, but we don't have that much time. So suddenly we were thrown like 5 different characters that we just met. The time frame that this game took place in is just looking at the above calendar. It was like about a month game time, even though it felt like we were only playing about 5 days worth. But I mean, we suddenly go from a crescent moon to full moon to get our werewolf powers and all that. I don't know. I mentioned this before. It felt like whoever wrote this was writing it in screenplay form and not in novel form. Like if I were to watch this in as a movie, it would make sense in movie terms where at the end I'd be so like one of the pet peeves I have about movies, and one of the reasons I don't watch movies anymore, but is just the forced relations of the characters. Like it bothers me a lot when, and you mostly see this in kids movies, but when at the end all the characters are ready to go their separate ways, and they're all weepy and like, I'll never forget you, and then you think about it and it's like, man, this whole movie took place in 2 days, like what the fuck. But so that's kind of what this game felt like to me in some stages, where it's just like, okay, let's move the story along, people, where it really had the potential to have a very deep and interesting story, especially if the decisions and, like I said, the possibility of including the werewolf form idea came into play. That could have branched out in so many different ways, and so it's kind of disappointing that it didn't go really deep into it. It felt like the potential was there, and then it just glossed over so much. And having never really been into the werewolf game, the role-playing game, and the lore and all that stuff, it's interesting to see how it is portrayed as opposed to the vampires. The vampire factionalism thing is pretty easy to understand, I guess. It's pretty easy to wrap your head around. Lots of video games are very uh, formulaic, very tropey, very very archetypical in stuff like that. Like you pick a faction in a game, and they are stereotypical. Like almost Star Wars aliens like all the Rhodians are going to be scumbag bounty hunters or whatever kind of thing. It felt it felt like that you knew what you were going to be. This one where you actually choose your path, get to choose your clan, get to choose the tribe and all that. That's the opposite approach basically. It's less about your blood taking control of you and more like, okay, well now you need to find a way to use the wolf powers to wrap around your own personality. And I like that because, like I said, it seems to give you a lot more choice of where the story is going to go. I'd be interested to see how many different storylines and endings and whatnot this can go through. But yeah, I don't know. It was an alright game, but a little bit disappointing. I feel like it could have just been that much better. And this game came out a while ago. I mean, it's been a few years, so it's not like they've done a direct sequel. There is another werewolf game that came out recently, but that's like a third-person action game. It's not uh, like this at all. So anyway, I'm going to end this one here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next Let's Play.